All right. Well, anyway. Hi-ya! What's happening, folks? For the Fringe FM. Coming at you live from the middle of nowhere. The center of everywhere. Here once again to give you yet another scrumptious dose of conversational boogie. This is Shift Happens. Alright, we are having some technical difficulties right off the bat. And, you know what? Does that work? Nope, it sure doesn't. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. We're just gonna turn that down. And we are going to not be on the Fringe FM tonight due to technical difficulties. So, let me just report that very quickly. Real quick, blah, 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 blah. Something weird went wrong. Can't get on the Fringe. All right. All right. Anyway. Okay, now we're back. We're going to have to do this the old school way. Hey, what's up, Disaster Russ? And right on. Yeah, I've noticed you on Twitter. Disaster Russ is in the chat room here. I've noticed you on Twitter several times. And yeah, good to see you in the chat room. Yeah, thanks for being here. MJ, Casper, what's happening, everybody? And also joining us as per usual is our trusty co-host JP. What's happening, JP?
Oh, there we go. Okay, I don't even know where the problems begin, but we are recording. I guess we could just upload to Fringe later. I don't know if it works that way, but at least we're here and it's Friday and we can rejoice in that, right, Gigi?
Right, and now I just got a message saying keep trying, which is going to be hard to do while doing 17 things at once and trying to have a conversation. But I shall try nonetheless. And actually, I think a fresh reboot here of the Fringe system should hopefully do a thing or two. And
what's happening out there in Shift Happens land, people? I hope you're all doing well. It's nice to get a crowd. It's I think it's a Good Friday, right? Doesn't seem like it.
I've had better Fridays. I have had better Fridays.
Okay Fridays.
All right, we are now live on the Fringe FM.
Oh, you're right. All right, there we go. Good job. Way to keep trying, Gigi. Cheers to you.
All right. Woo, boy, that was the biggest just mania leading up to a show in the 6 years we've been doing this. All right. But we've got it working now. All kinds of miscommunication and things not happening, but it's all good. I believe so. Give me a quick little check 1 2, JP.
Check 1 2.
All right, we are in there. All right, so all right, everything's good, and yeah. So in case you're blind or just didn't read the link before you clicked it, obviously you'll know Casper Parks is our guest today, and we'll be getting into all kinds of good stuff, and we'll get to that in a minute. And yeah, I really wonder what was happening here. I'm still going to have to fix some things on the fly, but we'll do it. we'll do it. So we did miss last week's show. I was not feeling very well, and so yeah, it's been a couple of weeks since we've been on here. So anything extraordinary? Like JP, what's been at the forefront of your mind since the last time we did this show? What's something that's popped up that?
Well, I really try to be an observer, and one thing I cut out a long time ago was the news. But the news has been incredibly weird, and I know you and I had a little brief discussion about what's going on lately, and there's a lot of left hooks and jabs that are difficult to bring. I try to protect my ears from any of it. I just don't like what the news stands for anymore, and it's a complete joke. And but the news stories do slip through, and we had the whole political thing happen, and I don't like to go there, so I don't know if you want to, but yeah, it seemed like a big old distraction from all these other stories that just didn't really sit well, I think, with a lot of people. So there's a lot of shifty things going on, and I think it's super important to stay. You've made it this far, everyone. If you're hang out here with Shift Happens on Friday nights, you've come a long way through a lot of muck and mire, and we're going to keep presenting maybe stuff that you're not going to hear on those ridiculous mainstream news shows, and we don't really spin too much. We like to go right for what's really going on.
Yeah, and there's definitely a couple of things I want to bring up relative to topics that we usually don't cover. Now, Disaster Russ is saying he's hearing some sort of audio repeat. I can't imagine why that would be. Anybody else having that problem in the chat room? Please say so if you are.
So far, sounds good to me. But yeah, what's going on out there?
Yeah, well, like I said, we, back and forth with the network for, okay, MJ says me too. I can't imagine why. Okay, we're gonna have to figure this out before we can't have people hearing double. Okay, Daryl says she does not hear double. Okay, folks, if you're okay, Dennis also said, hey, what's up, Dennis Koch? Haven't seen you in a long time. He says no echo there. So, yeah, that's beyond me. Everything's pretty normal here. Mike sounds good, except for the annoying voice coming from my mouth, says Elf.
That's Elf.
Okay, so, all right, I think we're good. But yeah, so let me get everything back in place here. Let's see. Blah, 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 blah. Sorry, folks. We're really... You have no idea how much is going on behind the scenes here, technological-wise. I'm barely paying attention. But one thing... Actually, I'll probably save what I was about to say until we get Casper on here. I know the Parapod conference just went down last weekend or the weekend before, whatever. Brad was there. He said it was an awesome time. We've got some really cool guests that Brad swooped up for our show that I don't want to announce. But I will give you one. Scott Walter coming on the show for the first time pretty soon. That'll be a good one. That shall be a good one. And then we've got Mike Barrow's going to be coming back soon. Billy Carson's going to be coming back soon. So yeah, we've got a strong month coming up, and a couple of months at that, actually. And to tell you what, I was feeling pretty terrible today. Almost didn't do a show today, and called my good friend Casper. I was like, hey, last minute, any chance you can make it? And he was like, yeah, I'm there. So that's what we're doing tonight. Another edition of Feeling the Pulse of Society, if you will, which is our trademark little, that's our show that we do with Casper Parks. He has been the guest on this show more so than any other guest. And there's good reason for that. He has good insight into things, and he really does have his pulse on society. And so we'll be getting to him in just a minute. Also, if you're just now tuning in, you're listening on the Fringe FM or whatever, you've never entered the chat rooms, make sure, you don't have to, but if you want to hang out with all the cool kids and ask your questions to us or the guest, or even just take part in the side conversations happening in the chat room that are based on what we're talking about, it's a fun time. And the best way to get to our chat room is go to shifthappensradio.com, look for the episode player in the homepage. Under the current episode, just click the little text speech icon, and then bam, you're in there. You make a little name for yourself, and you're in there. And then also we have the chat over at the Fringe FM Discord, which is just go to www.fringe.fm/chat, and it'll give you an automatic invite into the Fringe FM Discord. Both are great ways to participate in the show rather than just listen, and highly recommend you do so. And also, if you can, the censor cord, as Joe says. Yeah, we also do have a Fringe FM Telegram that we use because we got a big hit from Discord. Because somebody said something that the big theys don't want us to hear. And we got a big strike. It scared a lot of people off. So we're sort of reconvening in Telegram. And if you want to find us in Telegram, that group is called Fringe FM Group. 3 words. Fringe space FM space group. And that is the Fringe FM Telegram, where it's not just a chat room for this show and the other shows, but it's also just 24/7. Just all day, every day, people post in there, talk, share links, and all that good stuff. So make sure you get in there. And yeah, who knows, Elf? We might try Gilded. That's not entirely up to me, but I think Gilded is pretty cool. Gilded is just like Discord, and that might be something we look into. I know a few friends of mine use that for their shows. And but yeah, good point, Elf. Good point. But anyway, without further gilding the lily, without any further ado whatsoever, let's go ahead and bring in our guest tonight. It's the one, the only guerrilla novelist, Casper Mother Bleepin' Parks. What's up, Casper?
Hey, Gigi, Jeff, and everybody. Can you guys hear me all right? Hopefully.
Yes, we can.
All right. Excuse me. Yeah, Good Friday, Easter weekend. Buddy Foo-Foo's out running around.
Oh, that's what he meant. That's what you meant by Good Friday. Okay, yeah, I totally forgot.
Yeah, it's Good Friday, Easter weekend. And then Memorial Day is the next really big holiday coming up. So, and everything. Yeah, so I've been right now on science fiction. Dennis, if you want to keep up on Star Trek stuff, man, you got to follow Dennis. It's Koch, Koch on Twitter, because I follow him, and you get all the updates from Star Trek. Trust me. Following Dennis, boom, you get everything. And he has some nice links in there for articles on theories they got 2 episodes left to go at the time we're airing this podcast and recording it. They got Jack Crusher, which is Picard's son, who's seen visions and got these special powers that he that he uses. I don't want to spoil it if you haven't watched any of it. But the whole theory is he's hearing voices and seeing visions, which are in the trailer, so no spoiler. And, you know, and that's the main villain. So we haven't really met the main villain yet. Excuse me. And there's only 2 episodes left. But the sub-villain was really good. Vatica, or whatever her name was, that was pretty good. And because they're dealing with the changelings. But there's theories on what happens with Jack is, you know, did he inherit some of the Borg? Because the Borg all altered Picard's DNA when he became Lakotas. And did he pass that on to his son? And is that part of the problem? It's a good mystery, and it's, you know, I'm enjoying it. They're talking about spinoffs already, possibly with the Titan. At first, I kind of found the captain of the Titan, Shaw, I think his name is, whatever, kind of annoying. I didn't like the character, but as as season 3 progressed, I began to like the guy a little bit better. So, and of course, 7 of 9 is on there. They got the whole, basically about everybody from the Next Generation. It's doing pretty good. I'm really happy with it. It's but only two episodes left. It's on Paramount Plus. That's why, I mean, I do Paramount and I do Disney. I pay for those 2, but you know, it's mostly for the outer space stuff. And then Star Wars is well, Star Trek. Hopefully, we're going to see some spinoffs. I like to see the Titan spinoff. I think that's kind of got me now. And they're talking about a Star Trek Discovery spinoff with they're going to do cadets from Starfleet Academy. That would be interesting if they do that. So, yeah, Dennis is saying we'll know what's in door number 9 in the next episode, would be episode 9 for Star Trek Picard. Star Wars Mandalorian. It's weird. Some of those episodes are like a little over 30 minutes. Some are like 45 minutes, 48 minutes. The time kind of varies on those a lot. And they got another series they're doing called Skeleton Crew. So, which is a bunch of kids or something, and some old guy. They got Jude Law, the actor, has been cast in there, and they haven't been really clear on who the teenagers or children are, but they say it's going to be adult orientated for the writing. So we'll see what Skeleton Crew soon as starts filming. A lot of stuff is so big budget, though. You know, it's big budget to get that stuff done. Because all the special effects, it's just amazing. But yeah, so those are the 2 I've been kind of watching. I've been watching the Ark on Sci-Fi Peacock, which is the Earth's climate's just kind of destroyed. Everybody's dying, and they built these arcs. And Ark 1 took off ahead of everybody, but they didn't have light speed capability, so everybody's in cryo sleep, and they get attacked, and everybody that's a part of the cryo bay that's older, and the scientists and the people that run the ship, they all got sucked out into space. And so it's just a crew of people that are in their 20s, basically. And now they're dealing with some other arcs, like Arc 15 had light speed capability, and it's getting some bad reviews, and I can see why the Arc was getting bad reviews. The first few episodes are kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah, I got lost after, like, it's either the first or second episode. I was like, I just never went back.
Yeah, but it's 12 episodes. There's only 2 episodes left, I think. And is my voice echoing for you guys?
No. Sounds great.
Okay. It is for me. It's echoing in my headphones. It gets better. It does. It gets better, but it takes quite a few episodes before it gets better. I mean, any new series usually takes about 3 to 4 episodes to get their footing. Like Silver Point, that was on the BBC and on Hulu. I recommend watching. It's good for teenagers. And it took about 3 or 4 episodes to get their footing, and they're currently in the editing process for season 2 of that. So we'll see how that comes out. But it took them 3 or 4 episodes to get their footing, but once they did, it was pretty good. and it has all your science fiction stuff in it you want, alien artifacts and time travel and everything else. So I thought that was all really, really good. But yeah, the arc is, I'm going to finish watching it. I'll probably watch, it hasn't been renewed for a second season yet. But like I said, it takes more than just 3 or 4 episodes for them to get their footing. Even now, occasionally I'll look at it and go, that's kind of hokey, but it's still, it kind of feels like it was written in the 1980s, just the style and everything that's going on with it. It kind of feels like someone wrote it in the 1980s or 90s and it just kind of sat somewhere for a long time, which is very, very possible. But it just kind of feels like it's coming from a different decade for the writing. But like I said, now I'm kind of into it, but there's only like 2 episodes left out of 12. So we'll see how that goes. La Brea, which was a time travel that takes place in California, that didn't get fully canceled. They're giving them 6 episodes, which will probably be in December, I think is probably when it will air, to wrap it up. That's on Peacock Sci-Fi. They'll have 6 episodes to wrap it up. So I think I was kind of generous with the network to give them space to wrap it up with, time to kind of wrap up the storyline. So I'm trying to think of any other science fiction that's out there. Jeff, did you got anything, or anyone in the chat ask me if I want to see something that's just been out in the last few months? Throw it in the chat. I'm kind of watching chat a little bit.
Well, one thing I do want to point out is, call me a super dork nerd or whatever you want, but
okay.
The Wizarding World series, the Harry Potter movies, obviously, but then they did the Fantastical Beasts and Where to Find Them. They did 3 of them, but there were 5 planned, and there's a clear cliffhanger at the end of 3. Then obviously, the thing with Johnny Depp, so they had to recast Johnny Depp, which I bet Disney is just kicking themselves in the ass for doing that, because turns out he was I don't know if you watched that trial between him and Amber Turd or whatever her name is, and so he should have still been in there. But then also J.K. Rowling, she got in some social trouble because she took a stance on transgender or whatever, and then the other actor too got into some sort of domestic violence, so just all the actors, a lot of people involved are getting in trouble. And whether you agree with it or not, which I don't agree with any of it, but they decided to cancel the 4th and 5th films, which, as a Wizarding World, those books came out when I was a very little kid, and before even the movies came out, I was already into the first 3 or 4 books, and so was pretty much every other kid in my neighborhood, like mid to late 90s, and I just think it's kind of sad, that they can't just, there's so much money to be made there, and so many people want to see it. All right, we got some wild noises happening, but we're also cutting to a commercial break right this very now. So, let's go ahead and do this. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Shift Happens here on the Fringe FM. I'm your host, Gigi, along with our co-host, JP. And
what up?
We are here tonight with Casper Parks, and we'll be back here in just a few short commercially minutes. Don't go anywhere.
This is KTLK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
The truth is out there, and so are we. KTLK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
Stay tuned for More Than Less, but Less Than More, right after this.
This is KTLK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
Are you tired of this new American dystopia we found ourselves in? Then why not take a break and join host Maverick Matthews as he tells stories from Hollywood and from wilderness adventures, paired with some nice down-tempo electronic music. Why not do it? Only on Fringe FM. Mindfire.
This is Rev Dan Lopez from Spiritual Warrior Today Radio, and you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
I came to LA to make rock and roll. Along the way I had to sell my soul. I made some good friends that make me say I really wanna be in LA. I took the 10 to get to Beverly, laid some rock to tape, roll out 180. Alan and Natasha always make me say I really wanna be in LA.
And we are back for the Fringe FM. This is Shift Happens. I'm your host, GG, along with our co-host, JP. Yeah.
Oh, there. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. That was shorter than usual. What?
Yeah, it was, and I didn't know it was going to be. That's just a thing on the back end here that I should have looked ahead and saw. But yeah, a little different than normal. Yeah, that was pretty short, but we're back.
No problem.
Yeah, we're back, and then joining us tonight is Casper Parks, CasperParks.com, guerrilla novelist, and let me see if I can. Yeah, I'm definitely a lot of curveballs coming at me, technologically speaking, behind the scenes here. I'm just trying to, do what I can. I'm doing my best. And, yeah, all right, let's see. Let's give it another 3, 2, 1. Let's see what happens here. Yep, see? That's what I thought. All right. And we'll just leave it right there. All right, so we are back. Now, like I was talking about, it's it really is a shame that the Wizarding World can't finish the series because of, just a bunch of social, political nonsense going on between various actors and owners and other actors. Because I was very much, I'm sure most people here don't give a shift about Harry Potter and the Wizarding World and whatnot, but I don't know. They were like, because the first 2 Fantastical Beast movies, they didn't really get to much. It wasn't until the 3rd one where it started actually tying in to the prehistory of the Harry Potter stuff. And, just what a cliffhanger. What a cliffhanger. And to think that they think that there's not enough money to be made from that series continuing is kind of crazy. I don't know. Does anybody have any, Casper or JP, why would they made it this far? Why would they just stop on a cliffhanger and just not continue.
If it lost money.
Well, that is true. The third one made less money than all of, not only the other two Fantastical Beasts movies, but also all of the other Harry Potter movies. It did make, but I think a part of it was because Johnny Depp wasn't in it, and they recasted it with some other dude, and they didn't even make him look the same. He looked totally different, you know? And because, to make an analogy, you know, an example, you know, the first two Harry Potter movies had one dude playing Dumbledore, but then he passed away, so they cast another dude, but damn, he looked like the same dude.
Yeah, they just did that on Superman and Lois. They one of the Superman and Lois, they have twin sons. They don't look alike. One has light hair, one has dark hair. But the character is playing Jonathan, the one without the superpowers. And I think it's Jordan that has the superpowers. He left the series, so they had to recast that with another actor. And there's a little similarity with how they look, but they're like 3 episodes in now, I think. And I'm fine with the casting change. It seems to work all right, that they actually pulled that off. But yeah, you change an actor in a show like that. Bewitched had the same problem, you know, when they changed who was playing Darren. That kind of, but once it got going, it was good.
Yeah,
so,
and also we're looking at the same thing with the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. The guy playing Adar, the main antagonist, he's being recast for the second season, which is, from what I read the other day, is still about a year and a half, 2 years away. But yeah, it's just, you know, I don't know. Like, it's not like they're not paying them enough money. You know, those guys get paid handsomely for doing very, I mean, I don't want to say easy, but they're getting paid more than what their work is worth. And,
I read somewhere Vin Diesel got paid $13 million to do Groot, which is basically I am Groot. You know, it's just a voiceover. I am Groot.
Yeah.
You know, but I guess it's how you say it. You know, well, he did the voiceover too, though, for the Iron Giant. So, you know, which was good. You know, that's a good. If you got kids in grade school, the Iron Giant's a good film. It's a good animated film, I think. So, but yeah. Yeah. Dennis St. Frey wasn't much of a profit on it. He's probably right. I think it's, you know, there might not have been. You know, if you're not making money, it's you know, the same thing with the music industry. It used to be years ago that you know, they drop $250,000 into promoting a band, but then they can lose a certain amount of money because they can write it off. But if it's not making money, they don't generally go, idea Peter The Expanse. That I would love to have seen another season of The Expanse, because that was on Sci-Fi, then it went over to Amazon, and then they ended it. But there's enough there for another 2 seasons, I think, of material from the books for The Expanse, and I should order those books offline. You know, I've been doing I read ebooks now over print. Well, I'm in my mid 60s, and I got a 12-inch Microsoft tablet, and I prefer now to read books off the tablet versus print, because the typeset's a little larger for me to read. It's easier to read, and books are generally cheaper. Ebook generally, not always though. I mean, these authors charging, you know, $10, $15, $20 for an ebook, I think is outrageous. You know, I really do. Ebooks, I don't think it should be more than $5 for an ebook, personally. You know, but $7 maybe at the most. But but yeah, I like to see. You know, a book I never read, I just downloaded. It was only 99 cents. I'll try to read it maybe like next week or something. Is 1984 George Orwell. Oh yeah. Did you know that? I forget who tweeted it out. Somebody tweeted it out. I know who it was. I'm not going to say who it is. They didn't tweet out. It was in a news article they wrote, but it's kind of an extreme left-wing thing. But they made a note that on April 4th, the diary entry that Winston does in there, which is it's a legal act to keep a diary, in the 1984 novel. He writes the date that he enters the date that he's writing the diary. He wrote April 4th, 1984. And that was on April 4th that was noted. And I thought that was kind of cute, So,
what's funny is, so when I was in high school, in English class, it wasn't required reading, but it was one of the options of required reading. You could pick one of 4 books, and one of them was 1984. And I noticed I was like one of the only people that picked 1984. And everybody else just read Lucy in Wonderland or whatever else these other books were.
Shorter, yeah. Yeah, 1984 is like 350 pages, isn't it?
At least. I'd imagine it's probably a bit more.
I got a joke. I wrote a joke.
Okay. All right, let's hear
it. It's a political joke. Don't make it further than it is, okay? All right. Okay. Breaking fraudulent news. Florida and Texas schools books must represent the earth is flat. Teachers are required to teach flat earth. Images and teaching that the earth is a sphere are considered woke and no longer allowed. Bad joke. Never mind. Didn't go over.
I mean, I got it.
I tried.
I got it, but yeah.
It's not that funny, I guess.
Dude, yeah, I
tried.
I watched an interview with this lady. So this was in 2021, and at that time she was 114 years old, I think. And they were asking her, what they taught her in school, and one of the things she taught was, well, one of the things, she couldn't really talk very well, but she was like saying that they were teaching her flat Earth.
I saw that video. I know which one you're talking about.
Well, I know you saw because I shared it to you.
I think, I think Dave interviewed her. Was that the woman Dave Weiss interviewed?
Yeah, the one David Weiss. Yeah, and and she was from what? Do you remember where she was from? It was like Mississippi or not Mississippi, but one of those or South. I don't know, but it's interesting that just as early as because she would have been. That would have been in the 1920s or 30s. They were still teaching flat Earth, and then there's somebody else came forward and were saying that they were teaching both as late as the 1960s in another part of the country. I think it was in that video as well. But
I never did any other follow up, and I'm just Dave's great and all, but I haven't heard that from others, and I guess of the panel here, Casper would be the oldest. But Casper, do you have any maybe family members or remember hearing that at any point during your journey that flat Earth was taught?
No.
Yeah, see, I haven't heard it outside of that interview.
Yeah, I was in grade school in the 60s, and then junior high / now middle school, I guess, in high school up in the 70s. So no. Dennis mentioned that Amazon was canceled due to demanding budget. So if someone else picks it up, another streaming service does, or it could be because there's books 7, 8, and 9 yet that they can make series off from.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. The Expanse was good. I thought the Expanse was pretty good. But yeah, I don't. People don't seem to read books like they used to, and it's kind of almost disappointing. But and I don't read like I used to either on books, and I really need to, read more books than what I do. I didn't like. Oh, someone brought an idea. I did not like Fahrenheit 451. I just couldn't get into it.
Ray Bradbury is one of my favorite writers, but that wasn't one of my favorite books of his.
Didn't he write the Martian Chronicles?
He sure did, and he
Yeah,
wrote.
those were good.
He wrote some great books even before he got into sci-fi. There's a book called Dandelion Wine, very old coming-of-age story by Bradbury, semi-autobiographical, and that got me into it and into his writing. And I agree though. A little hit or miss, I think, with some of his sci-fi.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to look this up. And so you're typing. I think he was like a. I think that he was when he was in the service, he had something to do with communications or radar in the military. I think that was Ray Bradbury, but I'm not sure. It was one of those science fiction authors from back in the day. It has something to do with developing something to help with one of the world wars. And I can't remember if it was him or not somebody else. It's something to do with radar. Oh man, I was going to know what author that was. I'm trying to look and see if it was him or not. Hollywood career, boom, boom. Doom. Greentown culture. I'm just trying to see if something mentions his military life in here. Yeah. Maybe it wasn't him.
But you know what really does need to... one thing I was going to say is, honestly, I don't know, it hurts my eyes when I read ebooks on screens for that long. Like, I know there's those options to turn the blue light on or off that kind of helps with that. But honestly, I'd rather just read the book. But even more than that, I love audiobooks because I can go grocery shopping, I can run errands while this book is playing in my ears. And the only problem is sometimes the narrators suck ass, so that can kind of ruin the whole thing. But you got a good narrator, and I don't know, I think audiobooks are definitely kind of the way to go. The only problem with audiobooks is it's too easy for something to go over your head real quick. And because like when you're reading a book, you'll read a sentence and then you'll double take, like, wait a minute, I'll read that sentence again. But it's not so easy with an audiobook. With an audiobook, you have to skip like 30 whole seconds when you just wanted to go back one sentence, and it just. But
I think Micah Hanks. If I were doing audiobooks and we're paying somebody, it'd have to be Micah Hanks. He's got the voice.
Oh, he's the best. He's so articulate, and he'd be great for that. Yeah. But he's
so busy.
He's so goddamn busy, and
he just released a great podcast today too. I got halfway through it. It's really good. He's talking about like Area 51 and stuff in there. It was pretty good. Mike Hanks, he's got the voice for it. But and everybody tells me that, Casper, record it yourself. And I worked in radio, and it's so difficult to listen to my own voice. I find a real difficult time listening to my own voice.
Yeah, but your voice is so soothing, and it's like it reminds me of like Morgan Freeman. Just when you hear him narrating something, you just pay attention. And
I always did.
You've got one of those voices.
Radio, I always rated number 2 as women, and whatever year I was in, I was rated number 2 as women. It was weird, the first station that kind of where I rated number 2 as women was in just outside Gainesville, Florida, and I kind of chalked it up to Frank Sinatra because I play Frank Sinatra once in a while, but then I did the same thing again at a country music station later up on the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I pulled a number 2 rating with women too, so it was like the same ratings. So maybe it's my voice, I don't know. But I think number 2 isn't too bad. It's all right, I guess.
Yeah, honestly, I think when it comes to, I don't know, I think there's some books by some authors that should be narrated by them, but then there's others that shouldn't. Like Stephen King, great example. He sucks at narrating. It just doesn't captivate you, and like his books are great. He's just a shifty, and by shifty I mean shitty. He's just not a good narrator, and but when it comes to more, I guess what I'm trying to say is nonfiction books, I want to hear the author saying the words. You know what I mean? But if it's a story, then I think if it's a fictional story, then I think that's acceptable to have someone else narrate it.
I wonder how many women narrators we have out there on books, because it always seems like it's mostly guys. Maybe I'm wrong about that. It seems like it's mostly guys that do that. I don't know.
No, I think you're right.
So.
I think you're right in that. Yeah, I've never heard a single audiobook except for one. Remember that podcast, Rabbits, JP?
Yeah, that was an amazing series.
Yeah,
you had some good recommendations, but I can't remember, what was that one called? Oh man,
the Black Tapes and Tanis. Those are all from the same people. But so there was the Rabbits podcast, right? And they did 2 seasons of it. But there was also a Rabbits novel that was completely like, you did not need to hear the podcast in order to get what's in the novel. Like, it was a standalone novel, but it was narrated by a female, and it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. But that's the only case I can think of. Yeah, you're right, Casper. Like most narrators seem to be males, but I think it has something to do with that. The old wise man.
Dragon Rose says she's listens to a lot of books with females reading the books. So, seeing Dennis Kuch is saying the females they're doing like romance novels, historical novels. So it might kind of hinge on the genre as well.
Yeah, there's definitely
very, very possible.
But I think I think certain genres fit certain narrators, but yeah, for the most, I mean, as far as my experience, yeah, it's mostly old wise sounding, like Gandalf type of voices,
Yeah.
or Morgan Freeman, like
that. Shit, I wouldn't know how much emotion to put into something either. When you're reading it, I should try that before I publish the next book. I should narrate it, and then when I do both at the same time,
you really should
get it
man.
up on Spotify.
I could not recommend enough that you narrate your own books for audio format. I think that you've got the voice, you got the chops, you got plus it's your story. You know the story better than anybody, so you know when to articulate things and when not to. Like, I think that would just be perfect. I think that'd be perfect. But
oh, yeah, go ahead.
Well, one thing I want to mention. Wait, did I mention this already? I don't think so. We need Orville season 4. That needs to happen. God. That needs to happen. I
thought that was filmed already. They just haven't released it, or it's in they're in their post-production phase, or what do they call it? The after thing. I don't know if after break, if you want to touch on this or not. Through the UN right now, there's a draft through the United Nations. It's called the Cyber Crime Treaty, which is going to change a lot with internet, free speech, surveillance capabilities that are going to be allowed for law enforcement across the globe. if you want to learn more about something like that, go to on YouTube. Their channel's EFF.org. That's Electronic Foundation Frontier. It's something to keep an eye on, see what the United Nations is doing with that. But the cyber treaty thing. It's really weird. TikTok, there's a couple other small pieces of legislation that are getting pushed through with that. One's called the Risk Act, which would possibly make using a VPN number illegal.
Yeah, they're trying to make VPNs illegal, which is crazy. That is just a solid statement in itself. That just means you are they want to keep track of you. That's all that means.
Oh, yeah.
That's all that means.
Yeah, and it's like, if you look at Wisconsin Tuesday, the liberal, just not going to either political side, it's just a statement of how the votes went. Assuming, since I go rigged elections, go how the votes went. She won by 11 points, which is quite a bit, and she was liberal. Wisconsin's so extremely gerrymandered to the right. It's been that way for 15, 20 years. But the reason that they got over the hump as strongly as they did with her was what's referred to as Gen Z. And they do most of their organizing is done on TikTok, which I know there's concerns about China and everything else, but they do a lot of their organizing on TikTok. And there were videos, not just on TikTok, but you could see the hundreds and hundreds of college students, which is Gen Z, lined up to vote for that justice. And of course now the Republicans there, because they have a supermajority, are talking about impeaching her before she even gets into office, so they have to have another election. It's like, oh, come on, people, knock it off. But at any rate, yeah. So just bit of freaky news. It's like everything is like Gigi said earlier, and JP. A lot of stuff that's like in our face constantly is just a distraction, and it's what's going on that we don't know about. And going to like the Electronic Foundation Frontier, you can find them up on Twitter. I know that. And those guys are good guys. I mean, they fight for your civil liberties on the internet. So, it's something to, to keep an eye on. I mean, those are groups to watch, but some groups you definitely don't watch them at all. But yeah, you just back off. It's about controlling the algorithms. That's true too. So
yeah, and
I'm getting all these notes up from Bing in front of me. Bing, how can I help you? If you want to start over or type a new time. Oh, Jeff,
dude, I got a thing from Bing for the first time ever today. I've never even heard.
Well, Jeff, did you just put those Bings up there? JP, was that you? American?
No, I did not. But I know that Bing is the AI.
Yeah. What was it? It was. I can't even remember. It was on one of my computers when I was starting my show, and I had to accept this Bing thing in order to keep using. I don't know if it was Skype or Zoom or maybe it was. I don't know. But either way, we have to cut to commercial break right this very now. So let's go ahead and do that. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Shift Happens here on the Fringe FM. I'm your host, Gigi, along with our co-host, JP, and we are here tonight.
The AI is going to get me.
Yeah, it might. And we're here tonight with Casper Parks. All right, we'll be back here in just a few short commercially minutes. Don't go anywhere.
This portion of the show is being brought to you by Honest Ed's Used Cars, where you can be assured that none of our fine previously owned vehicles have ever had their odometers turned back, unless, of course, they had lots of miles on them. That's Honest Ed's Used Cars, where we're not satisfied until you're satisfied, or until we've taken your money, whichever comes first.
Alex X. Hi, I'm Alex Exum, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Yahoy there. This is Gigi from Shift Happens. And holy shit, you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM. Hey, don't you dare turn that stand.
I'm Alan Edwards, and this is your Fringe FM News Brief. Gunmen kidnapped 4 U.S. citizens who crossed into Mexico from Texas last week to buy medicine and got caught in a shootout that killed at least one Mexican citizen, U.S. and Mexican officials said Monday.
The 4 came under fire Friday shortly after entering the city of Matamoros from Brownsville, the southernmost tip of Texas near the Gulf Coast, in a white minivan with North Carolina license plates, the FBI San Antonio Division Office said in a statement Sunday. Oscar Mays reporting.
The U.S. Supreme Court on Monday declined to hear a Florida city's bid to fend off a lawsuit by atheists accusing officials of violating constitutional limits on government involvement in religion by staging a prayer vigil following gun violence that wounded 3 children.
The justices turned away an appeal by the city of Ocala of a lower court's ruling endorsing the right of the plaintiffs, backed by the American Humanist Association, to sue over legal harms they said they sustained attending the 2014 vigil, in which uniformed police chaplains preached a Judeo-Christian message.
China set a modest target for economic growth this year of around 5% as it kicked off the annual session of its National People's Congress.
China's gross domestic product grew by just 3% last year, one of its worst showings in decades, squeezed by 3 years of COVID-19 restrictions, crisis in its vast property sector, a crackdown on private enterprise, and weakening demand for Chinese exports. Libby St. James reporting.
Egypt sentenced 14 people, including rights activists, to prison terms ranging between 5 and 15 years on terrorism-related charges in a trial deplored by rights groups as unfair.
The verdicts, the latest mass sentencings in Egypt, were reported by the Egyptian Initiative for Personal Rights, one of the country's most prominent human rights. The suspects were arrested in 2018 as part of a wide-ranging crackdown by authorities on dissent. Guy Davis reporting.
This is the latest news headlines. Nearly 200 countries signed a treaty to protect marine life in international waters after 2 weeks of negotiations at the United Nations headquarters in New York City.
I'm extremely encouraged that countries have agreed on the UN legally binding instrument to ensure the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction, Antonio Guterres, the Director General of the UN, said in a statement. Liam Wilson reporting.
A train derailed in Ohio on Saturday requiring hazardous materials crews to respond, just weeks after another train carrying toxic chemicals derailed and ignited a fire near the town of East Palestine.
20 cars in the 212-car train derailed in Springfield Township, located just 10 miles north of East Palestine, while carrying tankers with residual amounts of diesel exhaust fluid and polyacrylamide water solution, officials in Clark County said in a statement. Clara Hudson reporting.
Michael B. Jordan's Rocky spin-off Creed 3 is the #1 movie in North America, earning $58.7 million in receipts this weekend, BoxOfficeMojo.com announced.
Coming in at number 2 is Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania with $12.5 million, followed by Cocaine Bear at number 3 with $11 million, Demon Slayer at number 4 with $10.1 million, and Jesus Revolution at number 5 with $8.7 million.
President Joe Biden evoked the words of late Georgia Representative John Lewis in a call to redeem the soul of America by protecting voting rights. At the edge of the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama on Sunday.
A conservative Supreme Court has gutted the Voting Rights Act over the years, he said. Since the 2020 election, a wave of states passed dozens of anti-voting laws fueled by the big lie and the election deniers now elected to office.
And that's the latest news headlines. I'm Alan Edwards.
And we are back. Yes, ladies and gentlemen. For the Fringe FM, this is Shift Happens. I'm your host, Gigi, along with our co-host, JP.
Hey there, G.
Yes, and tonight our guest is Casper Parks. Casper Parks. Sorry, I leaned away from the microphone.
That's okay.
Now,
you want to do news you're not going to get from anywhere else?
I do, but one thing I just want, I was really fired up the other day, and I was talking with Casper on the phone about it. So, and again, we don't ever cover politics on this show. Very rarely. And if we do, it's in a conspiratorial, if it has to do with some legit conspiracy stuff, which, honestly, this might be the case. So, the other day, when Trump was being arraigned, right, he flew all the way to New York, to Manhattan, and did the arraignment and read the indictment and all that stuff. And then later that day, flew down back to Florida, to Mar-a-Lago, and gave his talk. Now, normally I don't give two tits about, because out of all these years of doing these shows and knowing all the guests and going to these conferences, and, whatever happens, I end up hearing about it from somebody. I end up hearing both sides of the argument, if not all 17 sides of the argument. So almost in a selfish way, there's no reason for me to pay straight attention to stuff like this, because I'm going to hear all the sides anyway. Just because of the connections I've been fortunate enough to make over the last 7 years. But this was one of those days where it was like, you know what? This is a historical moment, and I have nothing to do today. So you know what? F it. I'm just going to pay attention. I'm going to watch the news all day and see what goes down. So, and I was flipping back between NBC and Fox and whoever, and, with the exception of Fox, all the other networks were very, obviously anti-Trump and anti-everything, trying to put the worst spin on it possible. And so we heard their whole side of the argument all day. We heard that left side of the argument all day. And then, finally, when it came time for Trump to give his speech at Mar-a-Lago, at the end of everything, within about 8 or 9 or 10 minutes in, they just straight cut the feed. And they went back to the anchors. And even they were caught off guard. They're like, he wasn't saying what he thought he was going to say, so we're just going to talk to us now. I was like, well, wait a minute. You've been feeding us one side of the argument all effing day. And then within 8 minutes of the other side of the argument, you decide to not let us hear what they had to say. But, of course, the only exception was Fox. Fox kept the stream going. Because they're Fox, and they tend to lean towards...
They go right.
Yeah, they... Not just right, but more specifically towards Trump. Which can be taken in the same sentence, but also there is a little difference there. But it, that really, I'm not a Trump guy, I'm not a Biden guy, I'm not even Andrew Yang guy. I'm not, think what you will of me, I've never voted before. And you know why? Because I've never agreed with any one particular runner. There's flaws in all of them. Why would I vote? You could vote for the lesser of 2 or 3 evils, but in my opinion, it's none of you get my vote. No.
Yeah. The least they could have done was, after he was done, went fact checked him on whatever they want, and it was NBC that did it, because we were watching it together more or less.
Yeah.
We were on the phone, but then I flipped over to Fox to finish it, and Trump was spouting what, in my opinion, were just more falsehoods and lies, and that's why they, quotation marks, supposedly cut him off. But and he is lying about a lot of stuff. It's like the Presidential Records Act. Okay, that was passed after the Richard Nixon whole thing, and we ended up paying his estate $18 million, and that is true, because the Presidential Record Act didn't go into effect until actually it was passed, I think, under Carter, but went into effect under Reagan. And the Presidential Records Act, and this is where Trump, in my opinion, is telling a falsehood, is, he's like, I can keep those records and you can negotiate to get them back. No, the Presidential Records Act, everything goes to the National Archives, and then you put in a request form for whatever you want to have back for your presidential library, for example. It's not the president gets to keep them, classified material or whatever, and then they, National Archive can negotiate with him to get them back. That's not how it works. It's the other way around. And so that the falsehood they should have called them out on, and they didn't. And while everybody's all distracted by this on the same day, you had a few hundred Trump supporters, a few hundred anti-Trump people out there. There's probably more media outside Manhattan than there were protesters covering it. But in that same day in Tennessee, in the state capitol, I watched videos up on TikTok and stuff. It looked like thousands of college students and high school students, university students, marching down to the state capitol. The issues are relevant, okay? What's relevant is it wasn't covered in mainstream media. When you have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people marching down the main boulevard to their state capitol demanding an assault weapons ban, whether you believe in assault weapons ban or not, it's irrelevant. It's the fact that the mainstream media didn't cover it. That's a lot more people than what were out there in Manhattan. A lot of people, a lot more people. And it didn't get covered on mainstream media. You look in February 23rd with the Dish Mobile Boost network hack. TikTok users are calling it a level 3 hack. Did you hear about that, JP or Gigi, about the hack? It shut them down for a month. Boost Mobile and Dish.
I had heard about it. It's like,
yeah. I have Boost on my phone, and it's a level 3 hack. They got in there, whoever it was, and they didn't just disrupt services. They got users' personal information, shut down services, and then the backup systems got messed with, so they couldn't get it rebooted back up. And there was one point where this went on for like 2-3 weeks, that because I'm gonna have Boost Mobile from my phone, and they're like, "We're sorry, we can't access your account right now in the system." It's like, whoa, okay. You could go pay your bill at one point. You couldn't even pay your bills for a while, and at one point you could finally pay your bills. But everything is supposedly up and running now. But some people are like, "Well, Boost should have had a better backup system than what they did," and they probably should have. But that's a deep hack, and that was not on mainstream media. I mean, millions of people use Dish. Millions of people use Boost. And they got hacked to that level that it didn't just disrupt services, and they lost, customer information to whoever's on the dark web now. And they were down for like 3-4 weeks. It's like, dude, that's a big deal. It's like a level 3 hack, man. They shut down the operating system and the backups to reboot it, and it's like, usually something like that happens, we're back on in a few hours, maybe 24 or 48 hours. But they were down for 2-3 weeks. I mean, on and off. I mean, it was terrible. And that was not covered in mainstream media at all. That was just so bizarre that didn't get covered. And you think it would. But everything's going on that we're not even aware of. You look at what we just talked about with the cyber treaty at the UN. That should be in the news. It ain't. You look at the Risk Act. We talked about that. That should be in the news. It ain't. Right now, about to go through. We talked about this in the last show, Gigi. The merger with these major grocery stores. So now we're going to have less competition because of all these big mergers going on. That should be in the news, and it's not. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that should be in the news, and it's not because it's all Trump 24/7 or occasional Biden this or Biden that. Today, because they lost so bad in Wisconsin, some of these politicians and GOP, they want to raise the voting age to 21, basically locking out Gen Z. It's like that's a big news item, not in the news, but they brought it up.
What's interesting with the market thing before you move on to this next one is there may be fewer, more conglomeration, more fewer options as far as different types of markets to go to, but there is a secondary market that where they basically sell overstocked items or imperfect items, and those seem to be really popping up, as well as the I drive any city I've driven in the last couple years, they have tons of 99 cent or less, or dollar stores, Dollar General. These types of stores have really popped up. So I'm wondering if maybe that's kind of what we're looking at here. It's very strange though that they'd be lowering the competition for the top markets.
Yeah, and there's one of these cheap dollar stores near me, and they had to slash their hours because they can't hold on to employees. Well, because they don't pay them. They don't pay them enough, and they treat them terribly. These cheaper stores, and they're huge. These mergers go. Here's an example. Okay, so when Sprint and T-Mobile merged, Sprint had to sell Boost Mobile, which was their prepaid service, because the FCC and the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, didn't want the Sprint T-Mobile merger would have a monopoly on the market, right? And then just this month, they allowed T-Mobile to turn around and buy Mint Mobile, which is basically another version of Boost. It's not Boost, but it was still one of those little other carriers that subcontract to towers. So that really didn't make any sense. They forced them to sell Boost so they didn't have a monopoly, but then they turn around and let them buy Mint Mobile. So they still got them. It's just like it doesn't really add up. And they do that kind of stuff all the time. So do we lose Gigi?
No, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
I'm just waiting to.
Yeah. Oh! There's riots, and get this. This is weird. Okay, so there's a bunch of riots in France right now, in the last couple of weeks going on, because they want to raise the retirement age in France from 62 to 64, and people are rioting and mass protests about it, right? So here in the United States, and they're not talking about this much, there's a move to raise the retirement age again. Okay, it was 62, and then they moved it up to 65. And then for me, it's like 66 and a half. And now they want to raise it to 70. And it's not in the news. That's part of the negotiations, and Biden sounds like he's going to agree to it.
It's a really big story. And France, in general, has been kept way under the radar. We have missed out on a lot. The news that gets here is you have to kind of go looking for it. And
just to make a quick tie-in, that's what's great about VPNs, is because you can log in to other countries' local network and read their news. And with this new actions being made to try to make VPNs illegal, you're blocking us from being able to access the news from the other perspective.
Yeah, and it's and the thing is, the life expectancy in the United States has been going down the last number of years. It's not going up. It's all like, depending on which demographic you can look, and that's between 74 and 76 point something. So it's basically work until you die. And if you're 70 years old, I just don't see someone in a factory at age, even in their like 68 or 67 or 66, picking up these heavy boxes all the time of parts or whatever they're doing repeatedly. My uncle made office furniture. I couldn't see him, flipping, when he was 65. He's 10 years older than that now, but I couldn't see him flipping stuff like that, on these big tables and machine tables. You just don't. You're getting old, man. Your body's wearing down, and it's just like crazy, to raise it to raise that again, and it's really, 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 really nuts. But yeah, so I'm just like,
yeah, that's a story to kind of keep tabs on, and as we've seen with so many things, France may have been kind of the test dummy. But if you don't think those sort of concepts are heading this way, you're mistaken, right? I mean, that's just how it works.
Oh yeah. There's just so much going on that we're not aware of because it's Trump and the Republicans 24/7, Biden and the Democrats 24/7, and occasionally you get little beep beep beeps of this or that. And if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss it. And it's just really, really weird. So expect gas prices to jump up though, because OPEC and Saudi Arabia are going to cut their production of oil, which will boost up the price of oil per barrel, which will boost up the price of gasoline around the country, around the world actually. So that's you're going to see that one. You're going to see that coming this summer.
Hopefully not, but I think you might be right. I've a lot of tremors, a lot of people saying the same thing. $8-9 a gallon is, or $7 to $10 actually. The range is up there, but and nobody seems to bat an eye.
Yeah, it's you can't, like the cost of affordable rental housing, and we've talked about that on here before, and nobody brings it up. I mean, I'll jump in Biden's feed all the time and tweet about the affordable housing rental, not just buying a house, but rentals. And of course, they don't look at those. You get a few people that'll see it and give me a like or something or a comment. Once all get trolled. Something we talked about for years on here, GG, Shift Happens, even before we were up on the Fringe. We talked about the conspiracy back when Reagan and Carter were running against each other, where the Republican National Committee allegedly cut a deal with Iran to hold on the hostages until after the election to make sure that Carter didn't get an October surprise. And Iran agreed to do that, and they cut a deal with them about getting certain money back. And that was always a, quotations, conspiracy theory. However, now that Jimmy Carter's in hospice care, this was an article in Rolling Stone. One of the people that was on the peripheral, he was involved to the degree that he was working for the people that actually contacted the Iranians and cut the deal. So he was like an insider, and then he was part of the Reagan administration and everything else. Just about everybody else involved with that is dead now, except for maybe a few people. But this is one of the guys that was alive, and he felt that he wanted to get it off his chest so that Carter could confirm to Carter that this happened to you, and I'm sorry it did, and I need to get this off my chest. But yes, the RNC, Republicans cut a deal with the Iranians to hold on to the hostages until after the election, and when they're about to be released. And it turns out that this guy was like verified. He was not directly involved, but he was with the people doing it, like assistants, and he was in the Reagan administration. I can't think of his name right now off the top of my head. He is confirmed as an eyewitness to the fact that, yep, it happened. So that's no longer a conspiracy theorist fact that they reached out to a foreign government, being Iran, to affect an outcome of U.S. election. That's just, but we reported on that, GG. I mean, years and years ago, we reported on that. Yeah. It's kind of nice to see something that I can go back and point to. There, I told you so. Yeah. Sometimes I look at something and go, well, I told you so, but I guess I was wrong. And that does happen. That is going to happen. So, But yeah, it was okay. So in 2008,
we've got 1 minute and a half.
2008, IRA retirement accounts and 401ks lost $2.some trillion. In June of last year, the same thing, IRAs and that, and 401ks lost $3 trillion. These are people's savings for retirement, which is why Social Security is so important. So important. The banking regulations that went in place after the end of 1929, 1930, from 1776 until 1929, 1930, we had a major financial collapse roughly every 10 years. After those banking regulations went into effect, we didn't have any more major bank collapses, not enough to affect the economy, until the 1980s. And what happened in the 1980s? They undid the banking regulations in the 1980s under Reagan and the Republicans with their trickle-down economics, but they undid the banking regulations, and then within a few years, we had a couple major financial crises. And then we had one again in 2008, and then we got banking regulations back in place, and then they undid it in 2018. They undid the banking regulations again, which is why these banks in California collapsed the way that they did, because the regulations were removed. So, but we got a break right now, I think, like in 5 seconds.
Yeah, we do. But, one thing I want to point out is maybe I'll just come back and I'll start off the new session with this. Let's see, what I want to do. Yeah, not enough time to talk. So I'm going to go ahead and bump up the break 30 seconds. Let's just go ahead and take that now. Whoops. I did a thing that didn't do the thing. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Shift Happens here for the Fringe FM. I'm your host, Gigi, along with our co-host, JP, and we are here tonight with Casper Parks. And we'll be back here in just a few short commercially minutes. Don't go anywhere.
This is Jason Lindgren from Crow 777 Radio, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Hey, Donald. Thanks for visiting the Fringe FM studios. What brings you in?
I'm in the White House and I was lonely.
Welcome to the Fringe family. KTLK, the Fringe FM.
Stay tuned for More Than Less, but Less Than More, right after this.
You're listening to KTLK Digital Broadcasting, the Fringe FM. Astral travel, magic, mysticism, and manifestation. What used to be heresy should be understood as our birthright. These are some of the topics we discuss on Lighting the Void, where we take you deep into the unknown. There are guest interviews, live unscreened calls, and me, Joe Root. Come join our family of explorers of consciousness, weeknights at 9 p.m. Pacific time to 11, right here on KTLK Digital Broadcasting, the Fringe FM.
This is Dancing Dave from Surviving the System, and you're listening to the Fringe FM. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, the best revenge is success.
This is Tom Sherman. Down here at Banning College, we're promoting a blood drop. Oh, shit.
Guilty. Welcome to the Sound in America. You're listening to AM 580. Lay back with the sheep. Little lamb. Little lamb. Little lamb. Little lamb. Little lamb. Little lamb.
Steve sold Adam the apple. God told me so! To my face! Devil cannot be saved. Follow me and I will. Good to know that he's walking with me. Big rock as a weapon. The devil is a black stone. Into the fog. Let him cast the first stone. Jesus, Jesus. And you have fallen into the love that needs to be designed by the Lord.
All right, sorry for the harsh cut there, but we technical difficulties. Just trying to make it run as smooth as possible, and that break was also much shorter than usual. Not sure why, but anyway, we're back. Hopefully, you got back from taking a piss and you're ready to go, and or whatever it is you do during the breaks. To each their own. But we're back. For the Fringe FM, this is Shift Happens Here. I'm your host, Gigi, along with our co-host, JP. He might not even be back yet. Or is he?
Oh, yeah.
All right, he's here. And then we got Casper Parks as our guest tonight. Now, I do want to go back to something we talked about earlier and a comment in the chat room that really touched on what I was getting at. So when I was talking about how Trump's speech over at Mar-a-Lago just got cut from all the networks except for Fox. So Dennis says in the chat room, in response to that, he said, the reason some networks turned from Trump's Mar-a-Lago speech is because he just repeated himself from the same stuff that he was saying from 2016 to 2020 and a list of his personal grievances. But here's the thing. You're right. That's exactly what the news anchor said from NBC and everybody else that wasn't Fox. That was along the lines of what they said as to why they cut the feed. But wait a minute. Let's, obviously this is unprecedented. No president has ever been in this situation. So just imagine if it was Bill Clinton or if it was Obama. Do you think they would cut him off 8 or 10 minutes into the speech? No, they wouldn't. But they did cut Trump off. And again, I'm not a Trump guy. I'm not a Biden guy. I am as central as it gets, and I look at all sides. But once I see that you are very clearly promoting one side of the argument, and within 10 minutes you cut off the other side of the argument, there's some effery going on. And even if he is repeating stuff from his previous election run, doesn't matter. You still, what if, I don't know, what if, imagine John F. Kennedy, he gave that, not Kennedy, who was it? Eisenhower, who gave that great speech about the military-industrial complex and how we should be worried about it. Imagine if he was on television another time talking about the same thing and they just cut him off right in front of you. Just because he's repeating the same thing doesn't mean it's not worth repeating. And in fact, by cutting him off, even if he is repeating stuff, that just makes me even more curious to go out of the way and see what he has to say, because they don't want you to hear it. You have to think about that. They don't want you to hear it, whether it's repeated or not. So you have to question that. You can't just accept that and just be like, oh, well, I guess it's not worth hearing because,
Yeah, let's flip the coin, like you said, okay? If it had been flipped and it was Clinton, for example, okay, Fox News, if they covered, I don't think Fox News would have even covered the response speech to that. They wouldn't even covered it. I doubt it. I seriously doubt they would have.
Well, that's because
there's a flip side of the coin.
Yeah.
We're looking at a divide and conquer mentality on the political front. And Gigi, you said something when we were on the phone. It's like, people are being indoctrinated to pick a political side. And the stuff that people really, really, really care about is really not being addressed. and and everything's all like revenge politics, and you get legislation introduced, whether it's state or federal level, that the one party will vote all against it just because they don't want the other party that's in the governor or the president to get credit for something. Dennis is right. Fox isn't covering the January 6th committee hearings. Right. They ignored those. And that the whole hush money payments, plural, because it's more than one.
Well, and also, just to pause real quick, Dragon Rose made a great comment. She says in the chat room, they all repeat themselves over and over again. It is called campaigning, and they do it all the time. Correct. So why is it only Trump that gets cut off? I've never in my life seen another president get cut off in the middle of a speech on live TV. Have you?
No,
you haven't.
No, it's and the thing is that they did do that, but again, on the flip side, Fox wouldn't even cover it because, like you said, they didn't cover January 6th. It's all divide and conquer politics, and we can't get the stuff that matters, like affordable rental housing, health care. This week that we're finishing up right now, a Texas judge, because they like to bring the stuff up in Texas now because court appointed or judges are appointed by politicians, so which way they can lean, decided that the Affordable Care Act, they no longer have to cover preventive medicine, like getting checked for diabetes, to see if you have diabetes or not. You get a test. I get tested at least once or twice a year for my blood sugar and my cholesterol and everything else. I don't pay for that because the VA does, but I go to the VA for my health care. So he ruled that, they're not, the insurance companies and the Affordable Care Act no longer have to pay for preventive health care, like getting your prostate checked, getting screened for cancer, breast cancer, especially for women, pap smears, things like that they don't have to do that anymore because it's, costing them money on the bottom line. That's something else that went under the radar because everybody's looking at all this hoopla, political hoopla going on. So, yeah, it's the corporate state. I use the term the corporate state quite a bit. Rather than deep state, I just, I'd rather not use that because it sounds like oogie boogie, can't quite put your finger on it. So I just start saying corporate state now because that's really what we're dealing with. I know in Canada, right now there's a push in several provinces to try and do away with the Canadian healthcare system. And trust me, Canada, don't do it. Don't do what we have here. Please don't do what we have in the United States. You will be so sorry. It will cost you a fortune. There was a young man, I just saw a news article, and I went to his TikTok account.
Well, real quick, I just want to clear one thing up. But do not forget what you're about to say, because you're on a roll there. Again, I don't usually cut people off like this, but I'm just, the chat room is all riled up now. So
it is.
Yeah. So I just want to say my main point is that by blatantly censoring what someone says, much less a president has to say, you're just immediate. Like, if it doesn't matter what he, like, saying. If he does, well, I know you do, but I'm explaining to the audience. Like, if it doesn't matter what he's repeating, then let it run. What does it hurt you? If he's just repeating the same garbage, then just let it run. Like, if I say I got raped by a Bigfoot alien hybrid, they're not going to cut me off, but when he says anything related to anything, they're going to cut him off. And they wouldn't have done that to any other president. And I'm not, again, I did not vote for Trump. I will not vote for Trump this time. In fact, I probably won't vote for anybody unless somebody comes out of the woodworks with something I agree with. But I'm just saying the point is, by virtue of censoring somebody, especially as big as a president of the United States, that is an act of fear. you don't want people to hear what he's saying, whether he's repeated it or not. That's the bottom line. And it doesn't matter whether what he's saying makes sense or not either. It could be total bullshit. It doesn't matter. By virtue of censoring him, you're playing that card, and you're showing that you have fear for whatever it is that this person has to say.
Yeah, it's the entire United States right now, in my opinion. We're going through post-traumatic stress. Not just the pandemic, but all the politics is post-traumatic stress. If you're trying to, they always said the United States would be destroyed from within. And that was the one thing. I said, if you're going to destroy the U.S., it has to be from within. And, and we're seeing a lot of that now, this divide and conquer mentality. I mean, it's, Dennis mentioned we all have Trump fatigue, and we do. And you have to wonder, is this being done to us intentionally, to break us mentally? If you go into boot camp, especially Marine boot camp, they break you emotionally so they can rebuild you into something else. And, here we are now getting psychologically broken down. It's just with all the politics going on. It's just so, I don't even want to call it politicking anymore. It's hoopla, but you can't. It's to divide and conquer, and it's like they're breaking us down to turn us into something else. And it to me it doesn't. It doesn't matter if one side's one way, and then all of a sudden, if they're in power, then all of a sudden they're going to flip over from this view to that view. It's whatever suits their needs at the time. You take a biochip, for example. That's probably quite a few years down the road, but eventually it'll come, or something akin to it. Some of the same people, the politicians that are pushing the whole, anti-lockdowns and anti-everything else that went on back then, if they're in control, and then they all of a sudden want to roll that biochip out, some of those same people will be the ones going, oh yeah, let's do this. I listen to these politicians that claim to be, quotation marks here, Christians, and it's like, the Bible says take care of the elderly, the sick, the orphan, the widow, those in prison. Christ taught that, and they're like cutting Medicaid for the poor, ending food share, SNAP. They're one of the first things Trump did when he was in office was slash the funding for Meals on Wheels, which feeds the elderly, and they also check on the elderly, slash the funding for that. That's totally against the teachings of Christ. So, and they've destroyed, the Christianity that I grew up with, as a child, and in my teenage years, the stuff that I was taught and the people I was around are long gone now. Most of them are all deceased, but that teaching and that mentality of the teachings of Christ are gone. These politicians have polluted the teachings of the name Christianity so bad that anybody else brings up the actual teachings of Christ in the gospel, people are throwing up a shield immediately and going, don't want to hear it. I heard enough of your politic and you mega people, and that's they've totally destroyed the real teachings of Christ. They haven't destroyed the teachings of Christ. They've just made it so that people are, as soon as they hear it, they're like, they throw up a guard rather than hearing really what he taught, whether it's Christ or another religion. But it's just divide and conquer mentality, and we, Dennis in the chat room's right. We need to fight back a little bit harder. Even when I go into TikTok, I've gone to some of these TikTok accounts that are really pro-left, sorry, and I'll type in just a nice comment saying, "Wow, I really like what you're doing, you're fighting for your education and this, that, and the other thing. Maybe bring up that they're going to destroy your parents or your grandparents' Social Security and Medicare," and you don't get any response from them at all. They totally ignore that. It's the me thing. And, we're all in this together.
This was a good demonstration of that. And those are all valid points, for sure. But if you look at the timing of the Trump thing, it's very odd that maybe 3 months back when Congress put this all, on a delay, and then all of a sudden, so then we have a week where two major banks fail, and the economy is just on fire. It's just, there's a dumpster fire going on out there. Yeah. And then there was the whole thing with there were a few things that were making politicians look bad, including the whole thing with the trans deal, and that's a real, hot fire issue. And then all of a sudden you have Trump come on and say, within 3 days on Tuesday, I'm going to be indicted. And it just smells of just a distraction, as just a complete distraction.
Yeah. We just kicked out another $2 billion for the Ukraine war
on the same day. On the same day of the arraignment. Yeah, they just slipped that through.
Yeah, this is not saying that we shouldn't help Ukraine. I am not saying that. I'm going to make that clear. We should help Ukraine. But if they can find $2 billion for that, they can find $2 billion to help American senior citizens, to boost up some schools, to go to the Aboriginal or indigenous Native American people and go like to Pine Ridge and bring their schools up the ground. Make sure they have running water. Some of those people don't have running water, and here we are in this new millennia. And, we ignore the Native American reservations. Just because it's Native American reservation doesn't mean they got a casino. I mean, the Oneida do, and they take care of their people with that money they make from the casino. They do. I lived right near an Oneida reservation, and I will tell you firsthand, the people that I knew, that were Native American, not just Oneida, they could have been Menominee or they could have been Ojibwe, Potawatomi, that they could still go into the Oneida reservation and get help, for some things, eye care, health care, stuff like that. They took care of all the Native Americans in the area, but they don't all have, these casinos. They just don't. And it's something that it's a national disgrace that we haven't gone in and taken care of all this, decades ago. It's a national disgrace. So, but yeah, it's difficult. And the thing is that as the election ramps up over the next few months and into next year, we need to prepare our minds to get more and more bloated. And in the UFO community, I saw an interview on YouTube. I can't think of the name of it right now off the top of my head. I could probably find it in a few minutes, though, like in a couple minutes. They were interviewing a guy about the UFO task force, and the hearings and everything else. And they brought in a Republican politician. And he said a lot of really interesting things. But one of the things that really bothered me that he said is, I'm trying to find something right now on the internet, so while I'm talking, is I don't want to name the name of who did it. And he was a GOP politician. And he said a couple of things that really disturbed me on there. Overall, he had a lot of really good stuff on there. But here it is. Okay. So it was the senator was hold on. His last name was B-U-R-C-E. Excuse me. Start over. B-U-R-C-H-E-T-T. I think he's a politician out of Tennessee, Republican. And what he said was, quote unquote, Congress plans to get to the bottom of it now that Republicans are in control of the House. Okay. One, we have Democrats who are on the same committees. Okay. When he's making it sound like it's only playing to the political side. And I did not like that he did that. Another thing that he said that really disturbed me was that he seemed to be in favor of providing back-engineered alien technology to the corporations. That's what he said. And it left me the impression that only corporations, and they would give them a monopoly on it. And that really, 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 really bothers me, that that was his mindset, was to provide that back to. I know they're going to want to develop it and everything else, but they're going to throw patents on it, and it's going to be away from everybody else. And I really didn't. I don't approve of the way that he said it. Just the tone in his voice, but it was Tim and then Burchett was a senator. It was on. Hold on, I'm pulling up the YouTube channel so I can make sure I give the credit to the right YouTube people that did the interview.
But I mean,
load. Yeah, Project Unity did the interview.
But I mean, the reason why they go corporate and private and financially that way is because they're not susceptible to FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. That's exactly why they do that.
That's correct.
And just all the more reason to pay the attention to what these corporations and private lenders are doing.
Yeah. I really missed the day when we talked about Jim Mars, John Anthony West, where when they looked at a politician, doesn't matter if it's the left or the right, they consider the whole thing a conspiracy, and like it was all being orchestrated, kind of more or less, which might be very, very true. Everything we're seeing could be very well orchestrated just to, tear us apart. And UFO Twitter can get political, and I like to keep politics out of UFO disclosure, if at all possible. I mean, which political sides. So, but we need to be politicians, maybe that brings stuff up, but we can't let them divide us by our politics in the UFO issue. We shouldn't do that. We shouldn't allow that to happen.
And and so we've only got a couple minutes here. Dragon Rose just made a good statement here in the chat room. She says, we cannot read/watch whatever we feel we align with, and of course we will hear what we want to hear. My take is that I do not believe anything the media prints or says. Makes it hard to know what to believe because they are all spinning their own agenda. But along those same lines, in my opinion, I've said this a million times on the show, I'm going to say it again. The only way to get to the core of what's happening is you need to hear all the various different perspectives on the same subject. The more different opinions you have on one subject, the more clear it becomes to you in your personal consciousness what is actually happening. And even if they censor somebody that is full of shit, that for a fact is full of shit, but they're not letting you hear his side, that still hinders you from getting the full perspective. You have to be able to hear all sides of the argument, right or wrong. And that ties into what I was saying earlier, whether it's Trump or Biden, whoever. It doesn't matter. But the split second they start, they start censoring information from you, that hinders your ability to form a collective opinion based on all of the opinions, because you're only getting some of the opinions. And like Dennis also said in the chat room, he's like, well, you can go tune into Fox if you wanted to watch the whole thing, But that's the thing, is most people are lazy. They're not going to switch networks. They're just going to watch the same one they're watching. They cut it off like, oh, well, I guess I don't need to hear that. And that's like 80% of people. They're not going to go out of their way to look for information. They're going to go to their, quote, trusted, quote, sources, to listen to stuff. And so, again, I repeat, it's not about who's right or wrong. It's about hearing all sides of the argument. That's the only way it becomes clear what's happening, is hearing all sides of the argument. If you're not hearing all sides, there's no possible way to really come to a central conclusion.
Yeah, we're about to close up, I think, aren't we now, Gigi?
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah, you can go to CasperParks.com, so you can find links for my books. My early books do have quite a few errors in them, but they're still good reads. I am working on book 6 occasionally. I need to get really focused on that and get that done. Accidental Destiny, a rock and roll novel, is my latest book, which is basically kind of the corporate state in a rock and roll band. JP, where can they find stuff about you? Did we lose JP?
You're right. I was muted. How much are your books, by the way? I remember you ran a really good special last time you were here.
Well, my ebooks are 99 cents US, available across the globe. They're also available now on Smashwords. Print books are about 12 to 14 bucks, roughly, give or take, for a print book. I keep it down, so I'm only making like 35 cents on a book, trust me. I'm not making money on the books. I try to keep the price down on a print book and on the ebook so people can afford it, because people are not wealthy, due to contrary belief. I never trust the numbers they put out there for wages or anything, so.
That's great. People need to get those books. You can find me at Property of Mars and, right here, Friday nights with Gigi. So, thank you so much for all that. We know you're on the news, and you've got your finger on the pulse of what's going on. I appreciate those stories.
Yeah, and absolutely. And also, so Dennis just drops in another message that I don't know if he knows that this is exactly what I was saying or not, but this is exactly what I'm saying. He says, a popular journalist who works for a major mag and has a podcast, in quotes, Casper knows who I'm talking about, end quote, forces himself to watch other points of view in whatever he is researching. And that, I think that is so important. You've got to hear everybody's point of view. I can't state that enough. The more different opinions you form, the more dots either connect or don't connect. And the ones that do connect from all the different points of views, those tend to lead to what is at the center of the problem or the understanding or what have you. And that's it. I'm just saying the split second, you get sent, if somebody is blocking information from you, then that means you need to go and see what they were blocking, like immediately. And I don't care who it comes from. You have to see all sides of the problem, including your own. And you have to mix your own opinion with everybody else's opinion to see what really makes sense. And then also, obviously, use a just amount of intuition and just your gut feeling, go with that too. But man, you gotta hear all sides of the argument. That's just, I've said it 7,000 times on this episode alone. I'm saying it again. You have to look at all sides of the argument. And that's it. So CasperParks.com for Casper Parks books. And JP, who are you having on your show tomorrow?
Right now, it's still a little bit of a mystery, but we'll have it figured out and posted soon.
All right. Well, if you want a little sidekick, I'm down anytime, man. So,
right.
And with that, let's go ahead and figure out how exactly to get out of here. Let's see. I do this, I do that, and then I do this. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Shift Happens Here for the Fringe FM. This show is hosted and produced by yours truly, Gigi. You can follow me on Twitter at GGRabbit1 and follow the show over at Shift Happens Pod. Co-host is JP. You can follow him on Twitter at Reperceptions with an S. over there on Twitter, and catch the show over at etalk.tv Reperception. And associate producer is Brad Harris. You can follow him on Twitter at ADS Brad Harris. And as always, all blames and faults go to Fran. That's right. Hashtag Fran's fault. All right, thanks for tuning in, guys. And we'll see you back here next week. Take care. Pay attention. Listen and learn. And most importantly, just enjoy yourself and do what you want to do. All right? There you go. We'll see you guys next week. Cheers to you.
Goodbye.
This portion of the show is being brought to you by